It's new construction. Why would I need a real estate agent? That's what we're going to talk about today on Just My Opinion. This is Jessica Duncan's Just My Opinion, and I'm Jessica. There's no handbook to owning a home. That's why I go beyond the transaction to share my insights and my opinion for adulting made simple. So today we're going to be talking about new construction. So you're thinking about doing new construction, whether it is in a spec-built subdivision. And a spec-built subdivision is where a subdivision is already being developed and there's a bunch of houses being built in there, and the builder has built houses or predetermined what houses will be going on what lot, right? So that's spec-built new construction. And then you also have custom-built new construction. And a custom-built new construction is where maybe you have your own lot or the builder has the lot, and you pick out a custom floor plan, you design it exactly how you want it. Maybe you sit down with an architect and design that house, or take some plans you found somewhere and tweak them a little bit to make it fit exactly what you want. That would be a custom-built house. And then we have everything sort of in between. You got a semi-custom. So today we're talking about all of those types of new construction. Doesn't matter what type it is. Do I need a real estate agent? Really? Why do I need a real estate agent? It's new construction. The builder has an agent. The builder could have an agent. So sometimes with custom built, they may not. But with your semi-custom or your spec built, the builder typically will have an agent. So do you really need one? So I think the important things here to think about is that agent represents the builder. Who is representing you? So technically, the agent sometimes is an employee of the builder. Sometimes they are a real estate agent that's just been hired by the builder to represent them. But ultimately, they do represent the builder. Why not have someone to represent you? Why not have someone who's thinking about your needs and negotiating on your behalf as you go through this transaction? So there is a lot of value that we bring to our buyers, even on new construction. One of them is a lot of people forget to do that home inspection. We make sure on every new home, there is a home inspection. On average, we find 12 to 14 items wrong on a brand new home. Did you just hear that? 12 to 14 items wrong on a brand new home. But the county's inspected it, right? Shouldn't everything be right on the house? We'd hope so, but they're human. It's built by humans. So there's going to be some issues. So we do a home inspection on every single one. And then we also are going to walk you through what those issues are on there. There are things that some builders will just say, we don't do. And here's an example. Some builders will not put caulk between the granite and the sheetrocked wall in the kitchen. So if you don't have a tiled backsplash, there's a spot there that really should be caulked so water doesn't get behind that granite. Some builders just will not do that. Well, if you're not experienced, though, in dealing with these builders, you may not know that that's typical. And then there are some things that they're going to tell you that they don't do that are not typical, and they need to do them. So it really gives you someone fighting for you on those repairs. When you have your own agent, it gives you someone in your corner that can go, hey, no, that is something most builders do. We should give pushback on that. Or, hey, make sure you get your home inspection. And here, I've got a great home inspector to recommend for you. Another side that an agent can help you understand with new construction is the closing cost. So you think closing costs are closing costs. Not always. With new construction, it depends on the builder. It depends on the contract. Who pays what? So a lot of the new construction spec builders, right? So these are going to be, again, your subdivisions where they're building a lot of houses in. You don't get to change anything in the houses. There's just a bunch of houses predetermined that are going to be built on the property. Every now and then you'll get to pick a color or something like that, the flooring from one of three, but that's about it, right? They're spec built houses. Most of those builders in this area tend to push all of the closing cost onto you, but not all do. So how are you going to know what your closing costs are going to be? Who's going to walk you through that? And some of those builders are going to offer you some pretty good incentives. They may say, wow, well, we're going to give you $10,000 towards your closing cost. That sounds great, but what are your closing costs? Do you know how they're breaking that down? Because every builder is going to do it a little different. Some will use our standard Florida bar contract. Some have their own contract. A lot of your larger ones have their own contract, and they are truly written to benefit them. And a lot of them will push all of the closing cost over to you. So maybe you met with your lender and you did your pre-approval and you found out based on your price point, your closing costs were going to be roughly $7,000. And then you meet with that builder and the builder says, oh, we're going to give you $10,000 for closing costs. You're thinking, great, all my closing costs are covered, right? Only to find out when you get closer to closing, your closing costs are now $12,000. Why is that? Because the builders move a lot of the closing cost over to the buyer. Not all builders, but some builders. So it's important to look at that contract and understand what closing costs are you going to be responsible for and what closing cost is the builder going to be responsible for. And it's very different with every builder and every contract. But that your agent, a good agent, can guide you through that like we do our customers all the time. And then with those closing costs, it comes down to that final closing disclosure or that ALTA. Almost every single closing we have had in the past 60 days that has been new construction, I have had to go back to the title agent and say, no, there's wrong closing cost here. That needs to be moved to the seller, or you have overcharged my buyer for prorations on the HOA, or whatever it is. There is so many times that ALTA or that closing disclosure is not right. Well, have you ever looked at one and knew if it's right? If you're not a real estate agent, probably not. They're very difficult to read. And so by having and you know what? It's not that they're difficult to read. It's just you don't know who should pay what, and it's a little harder, right? So we look at them as real estate agents all the time. That's part of what I do to protect my clients, is to look at that ALTA and try and make sure everything is right according to that contract. So that's just another thing a real estate agent can do for you to help you in that new construction. So even if you're doing a custom build, this is all stuff that needs to be determined ahead of time at time of contract in that custom build. On custom builds too, there's different things with different types of loans. Like a VA loan may require the builder to make the interest-only payments during the construction phase. That's an important thing to know, to negotiate into that contract and make sure that the builder is aware of that and that you are going to be able to use that type of loan with that builder. So there are some details there with a custom build too that you could still use a real estate agent on. Another big thing that we help our customers on a custom build, and some on spec builds or semi-spec builds, is we try and think about what could they want or do that's going to cost them less money to do when they're building versus what should they do after they close on the home. And so here's a very, very simple example is a fence. Maybe you want the backyard fenced in. Do you get the builder to fence it in, or do you fence it in yourself? Well, a lot of times the builders are just going to sub it out and then charge you 25% more. Sometimes more than that, but 25% more at minimum. So you're paying 25% more to have that fence built than if you contracted it out yourself to have the fence built. Now, there may be reasons for whatever situation that you want that fence done by the contractor. Maybe you're having a pool put in at the exact same time the house is being built before the closing, and you want to it's got to be enclosed so that no one walks into your backyard and drowns in the pool, right? So there could be some issues there, but those are questions and things we're going to talk about to determine what do you want to have that builder do versus what do you want to do afterwards. When we sit down to do a custom build or even a semi-custom build with a customer, I've got a list of about 45 questions I ask them. And I know that may sound crazy, but I ask them things like, do you put Christmas lights up on the outside of your house a lot? If you do, how many? Are you like the Griswolds? Do you put all these Christmas lights up? Or are you just like, yeah, one little wreath on the door and that's it? Like, I want to know what you're doing because there's things that we can do to make that easier when you're building, such as we can put an outlet in the eave of your house. It costs about $150 to do when you're building. That's it. Put a little outlet up there. You don't have to worry about running extension cords. It's real simple to plug your Christmas lights in. But if you build your house and then try and add that, it's going to cost way more than $150. And you got to find an electrician small enough to get way down into the eave of that house. So it's going to be a lot more difficult. They're going to have to pull back the insulation. If you have spray foam insulation, they have to cut that out. So it gets very expensive. And then you got to re-add the insulation. So there's little things that you can do when building that are going to save you money in the long run and make that house meet your needs. And that's one of the things we focus on with custom building. So it sounds weird if we sit down and talk about custom building. I know I'm going to ask you all these questions, but I'm doing it to save you money in the long run. And a good agent is going to do that. So the builder, a lot of times on a spec built home, will have an agent on site that represents the builder. So I can't tell you how many times my customers have went to a neighborhood and said, hey, well, I'm working with Jessica Duncan, but I just wanted to drive through the neighborhood. So they drive through the neighborhood and they decide, you know what, I really do like this house. I'm going to call Jessica. And the agent on site will say, you don't need to call Jessica. I'm a real estate agent. You don't need her help. Well, that is not true. That is, if you want help from your own agent that's going to advise you through the purchase, don't feel pressure from that builder or that builder's agent to not seek out and get guidance in that purchase. Remember, this is the largest purchase of your entire life normally. Normally, your primary residence is the most expensive purchase you do in your entire life. Why not have guidance through it and make sure you're making a good investment? Other thing you got to think about too is they're going to make sure resale value is good. I'm going to advise my clients on resale value because I don't just want to be their agent for this one purchase. When they go to sell this property, I want them to call me. And if there's going to be an issue with resale, I'm going to bring that up and make sure they understand, hey, you know what? All the other houses in the neighborhood don't back up to a retention pond and yours does. I want to make sure you understand that when it comes time to resell, the other houses in the neighborhood may sell faster and for a little bit more money than yours does. Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes those retention ponds are actually beautiful lakes. And when that happens, it could be a benefit. But you got to put eyes on it and determine that and get that advice from a trusted advisor like us. Another question that I get a lot with new construction is, should I use the builder's lender or not? And that really depends on what they're offering. So sometimes yes, sometimes no. So what I generally do is I take whatever the lender is offering my client, whatever closing costs they're going to pay for. If they're doing an interest rate buy down, which has been common here lately, that may go away in the future, but right now that's been pretty common. I'm going to look at all those numbers, and then I'm also going to have them compare it to what another local lender could do, or a local lender, and see what they could do. And let's look at it and see, does it make sense? If it financially makes sense, then yes, absolutely use that builder's preferred lender. If it doesn't, then maybe not. But we got to look at the numbers. There's not always 100% yes and no answer on whether or not to use the builder's rep or the builder's lender. Sometimes that lender can give you a better deal. Sometimes they cannot. There's been several situations where I have sent someone to my lender to have them reevaluate it and see, can they offer them something comparable to the lender, or could they offer them something comparable to the builder? And there have been many times that they could actually beat the builder's interest rate and provide them the same amount of closing cost, which is pretty good. So in that case, it may not. If the lender is able to buy that interest rate down, then it may make sense because it depends on what they're offering. So as a general rule, it depends. Does it make financial sense or not? Just like everything else, there is no hard and fast rules here on these. We have to look at each situation and advise you, which is why having a real estate agent help you with new construction is so important, because we're going to advise you through all of these situations. When you're doing a custom build, it's really important to understand too the limits for each category, let's say, in the contract. So what do I mean by, let's say, appliances? There's an appliance package, and on a custom build, you get to go pick out your appliances sometimes. But what you got to understand is what that limit is, and are you going to be able to pick out appliances in that amount of money, or is that going to add to it? Right? So on a custom build, your agent, what we do with our customers is make sure they understand what that limit is and make sure they're going to be able to purchase appliances within that limit. So here's an example. We're building a $1.5 million house with a customer, and there is a $5,000 appliance package when the original contract came over from the builder. Well, in a $1.5 million house, you're buying some pretty nice appliances, right? We're not getting some of the lower end appliances. We're looking at some of the higher end brand appliances, and $5,000 is not going to cut it. Actually, just the fridge could be over $5,000. So if we would have went into that contract without realizing that and without advising our client that maybe we need to increase that, then what would have happened is they would have went to go pick out their appliances only to find out, oh, no, we're going to have to come up with even more cash, right? Cash out of pocket before closing. And that's a big deal. So having us there to advise them on this stuff and go, wow, well, you really wanted some high-end countertops. You were talking about that high-end marble that you wanted. This is probably not going to fit within this budget. Now, this budget may get you some nice quartz countertops, but it's not going to get that really high-end marble you were talking about. So these are things that an agent can advise you on and help you negotiate a great contract to make sure you get that build in the end you're looking for. So the other thing a good real estate agent is going to do after you buy this new construction house is advise you on those post-closing activities you need to do. And if you want to know more about those, listen to our episode. We did a whole episode on what to do your first year in new construction. So make sure you listen to that one. There are things that they're going to advise you on what to do in that first year. One of the things I like to recommend, and this is just one minor one, but is change that AC filter every single month for the first 6 months. There's a lot of sheetrock dust that is gone through that AC system, and it's going to continue to clean out over the next couple months. So all in all, as you can see, if you hire a real estate agent to help you, whether it is a semi-custom, it is a custom, or it is a spec-built house, they're ultimately going to be working for you. They're going to help you negotiate. They're going to help you understand the closing cost, help you get what you want in the long run out of that house, help you understand the limits, understand the closing costs, understand the cash you have to bring to close, and really help you make a better financial decision throughout the purchase. All right, it's time for our home hack. So each week I try to bring you a gadget, an app, something that makes home ownership a little easier. This week, I'm going to talk about garage doors. There's a type of garage door that you can get, and it's not brand specific, but when you go to replace your garage door, you're building that new construction house, make sure you find this garage door opener that is going to have a battery backup and work without power. So nowadays, none of us have keys to our house anymore, right? We pull up, we hit the button that's tied to our car, or we hit the garage door opener, the keypad on the outside of the garage, and the door opens. Well, what happens when power is out? Or when a hurricane comes here and power is out, how do you get that garage door to open? Well, they now make them that have battery backups that'll open about 50 times on that battery life before you lose the ability to open and close that garage door without detaching it. So that is my home hack of the week. We love ours. It came in quite handy after Hurricane Sally when we were trying to help our neighbors get into our house while we were out of the area when a hurricane hit. So it's really important to look at that when you're replacing a garage door. Hope you enjoyed that home hack. Make sure you find a garage door opener with a battery backup. Thank you so much for listening today to the Jessica Duncan Just My Opinion podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. If you like this topic, you may want to listen to the podcast that we did about items not to overlook the first year in your new home. If you want to continue to listen to our shows, please subscribe so you're notified as soon as we release a new show and you never miss any of the valuable information. If you got a question you want us to answer, please DM me. I would love to answer it. We may just mention you on the show. Thanks for listening. And remember, it's just my opinion.